Steve, episode 46 of the Broadway block. About 29 days with no hockey, getting close to October, really hot. Haven't signed Kako yet. About 4.8 million in cap space left. When does that deal get done? What are you thinking for the rest of the summer? And is there going to be enough money to sign Tyler Mott by the end of it?
Well, I think Drury addressed it by saying that it felt like the cap would be a little bit too tight with Tyler Mott under there. Obviously, he hasn't signed yet, so I'm interested to see what the offers are looking like around the league. Maybe if he's only seeing offers that are low and within the ballpark, maybe it's a possibility. But I would not buy a Tyler Mott jersey in New York Rangers red and blue for right now. Regarding Kako, historically speaking, this has happened before with draft picks in the top 5 cresting into those RFA years. It's actually very seldom that they'll sign a contract, and it's actually never happened where they've signed a contract in August, according to, I believe, Statboy Steve and the or Hockey Stat Miner. And one of the interesting notes to it is that he is sort of due money, but I don't think that he's due as much as he maybe thinks, and this is maybe why a contract hasn't really been settled yet. I think they also have some time, and I think both parties know that. And maybe if you're Kako, you stand to gain more by waiting until all of the offseason additions have been done, and whatever is left is essentially left for you. But we should see, man. I think we called it pretty close to accurate how not much would be done. We knew Georgiev would be on the way out. We knew a backup would be on the way in, and Yaroslav Halak certainly shores up that role. Halak's also done really well in a backup role. It's kind of hard to get a goalie that really understands that level of ice time. And Halak also has incredible numbers against us, so it's just one goalie that is not in the ether for us.
Get him off the market.
I want to say he's got 3 shutouts against us with like a 9-2 record or something unbelievable.
Was that when he was with the Bruins though, or was that like not? That wasn't with Vancouver.
Isles numbers, him and Grice for a couple of seasons, I think we were like 8-1 or something against those two guys. But anyway, I think the what we've said is sort of remained true is that signing Kako is going to be the biggest to do. I would love to sign Tyler Mott. I mean, I think I'm probably as big of a Mott stan as anybody. And what he was able to provide for our team. And how about all of the deadline boys not being re-signed? Did not have that on my off-season to-do list.
But it didn't really affect us. Like, to be honest, like I thought Kopp was an upgrade over Strome, so I thought you would try to make that a priority. But Detroit gave him good money, good tenure, like good time. I'm happy with the Trocheck signing. I think it's upgrade. I think he's a better shooter than Strome. I think you mentioned it in a previous episode that what is he going to do with Panarin? Like, who's going to see that? Like, what's going to happen with that? I think we upgraded at the goalie. Like, obviously we let Keith Kincaid, our third goalie, go, but I think that was kind of fine. He's been in the system for a while. It's good change of scenery, get Deminged. We got Deminged. Halak is definitely an upgrade for us, I think, like with Georgiev, because if somebody's unhappy behind you thinking they should be a starter, like they're not putting their best foot forward, even though it's in their best interest to prove themselves. But I think Halak, if he had stayed healthy last year, I think he might have competed for that number 1 if Canucks were doing something with him. So that should be interesting to see, like, throughout the season. Did he sign for more than 1 year with us? He did a 2-year?
I want to say it's a year contract. I think too with what you said about Georgiev having that like sort of competitive energy behind him. I almost kind of hated that look that Georgiev would have. Igor would post a shutout, and Georgiev would just kind of like fist bump and then the rest of the team would all be like hugging and embracing, and it's like you can't really fake that. You know what I mean? You can't, when you see somebody that you're not really a fan of, you don't really fake that exuberance as well as you probably think you do. And he probably thought he was doing quite well with it. But when there's a bunch of cameras and thousands of people watching you and everyone can take screen grabs of how like clearly discontent you are, I think the writing was on the wall, even dating back to the Tony DeAngelo crap. But you have to think too, he gets thrown into that 3-headed goalie monster, that carousel of who's gonna take over.
Hank, Igor, and then Georgiev. Plus, like I said, like when we had the 2020 play-in, like Georgiev should have been the man there. Like, obviously, we were like, let's give Hank one more chance, get him in there. Maybe he'll play better than how he had been playing. But so I also feel for Georgiev, where I'm like, you should go off and be a starter like that, you know? Like, he's definitely. Do you think he's an upgrade over Kemper?
I mean, there were some soft goals, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, I've seen Gorgie give up, 5 or 6. It's the nature to having not that much money to spend in that position. I think the way that that team is built, they obviously they won a cup and they're content to sort of play that up tempo, high octane offensive game.
Francois is not a bad guy either. Pavel
He's
Francois.
proven. I
He's
think
unproven?
he's proven that he can contend. And what the thing is if you're in the market for a goalie, you have to be looking for those guys. I mean, we called it. Everybody had to be looking at Georgiev as an option to maybe excel into a starting role, but his age has to be a factor as well. Some of these guys that are in that perennial backup role that you have to pick from, they're already cresting past their 30s, and you can already sort of bet that you've seen their career and you've seen what they can provide for you. I would say that Georgiev, arguably speaking, hasn't really shown us his best work. And we also don't forget, during that 3-headed goalie monster situation, Georgiev actually had the most amount of starts that year because Hank was injured. Igor was still an undetermined product in that aspect. So what ended up happening was he gets more starts and he actually has a better career. If you give the guy the full length of the season, obviously, they'll probably split it 60-20, something like that. I feel like Georgiev's going to have a better year than maybe he's going to have some pretty spooky numbers over there. I mean, because if let's say he gives up three goals a game, which is perfectly capable of, Colorado Avalanche are certainly capable of scoring 5.
They'll score 5 or 6. Yeah, no problem.
Don't forget, the winner just has to score more and give up less. And I think that, yeah, Georgiev is a 1B, but that I think Francois is a B+ is what I'm saying. I think that what you're getting is a little cut above, and you have that
reassurance in Pavel.
I'm sorry?
I said a little reinsurance in Francois that you can take a chance on, like a Georgiev, like an unproven starter that could be a starter, could not be a starter. Like, you kind of have a guy in Pavel. So,
yeah, so my curious question, I guess, is I'm interested to see how much of the lion's share does Georgiev get, and if he's on a roll, do they just kind of trust him in that starting position and kind of let him have those games and those numbers? Because I think that he's going to thrive with more playing time. I would hate for him personally to see the rotation aspect of it, because I feel like this will suck him into the negative, because I think it's an interesting thing as an athlete that you're always sort of expected to have this calm, cool, level head, as if human things aren't happening to you. Remember dating back to the Islanders game where we were winning like 5-1. Georgiev stood on his head. I was chanting Georgie all night trying to get something to stick, and in the last 30 seconds of the game, Garden erupted. Georgie was the chant. The announcers back home were talking about it, and you can just see how proud this dude was, man. He felt that boost, and the whole team comes and smothers him, and it was magical. It was fantastic. I think that was, for me, that was the moment where I was like, no, this dude can play, but we need to be behind him. And then all the things that we just talked about, the off ice stuff, all that mentality of the maybe not getting that chance when you thought you were, which, like, shame on you, buddy. Like, you got Henrik Lundqvist and the guy they've been talking about for a decade. I mean, like, 6 years at the time, let's say. I just feel like the expectation maybe should have been properly managed by him. And I think that what would be really bad for his career is if he has the expectation that he's going to Colorado to be that guy, and he's stuck back into
beat up by Francois.
I
think everybody has their story. Like, look at even Igor had to overcome, like, coming here, battling a Georgiev, learning from like one of the best goaltenders of all time, not really getting a fair shot with 2 half seasons because of COVID and everything like that. And boom, he's proven himself. Also, even dealing with his on his native land, like in Russia, like, he was not the best one they considered. They said Sorokin. Like, even though we all know Igor's way better than Sorokin, but he had to deal with that. And as a professional, I think sometimes in different aspects, you have to learn to deal with that. It's the same thing as training your craft is training your professionalism. Like, some people 100%. Have it, like, other sports, look at Derek Jeter, Aaron Judge even talks well like that, and it's hard playing in New York. You're not playing for a tiny franchise or anything like that. So it's like, all lights are on you. You're not going to have 3 beat writers. You're going to have 13 beat writers, then 2 million more fans than, playing in a smaller demographic. So we shall see.
No, it's not. You're right. It's not easy to play in New York, and I think that, again, like what I was saying, we forget that these guys are human, and I think that even to your point, Igor was, I forget the team. Let's just call it a nationals team or something. He was actually a backup to Vasilevsky at a point in his life. So you go into that playoff series where Igor said up 2-0. Vasilevsky's still the best goalie in this league. I mean, there's a certain level of respect that you have to sort of carry. Right. And trusting in that, that guy's the guy now, but listen, when it's my time, it's my time. And I think that Igor has certainly used that as fuel. And I would love to see, because one of the, I think, unique things is, as especially with you and I, but Ranger fans in general, is that there's a love that carries through other organizations to players that have done right by us. And I truthfully wish Georgiev, I probably wouldn't be saying this if he was wearing an Islanders jersey, but I really wish Georgiev the absolute best. If Colorado's going to win a cup, I hope to God that Georgiev is the one that's holding it. And I just, I
don't
feel
want
like
to see anyone go back to back these days.
no, not back
I
to
want
back.
Igor
No,
left that
but
cup.
if they're gonna win it, man, I wish the best for the guy. And I think that team has certainly crafted the mold, and don't be surprised if we see some teams sort of embody that same sort of style. What's yet to be seen is Nazem Kadri. Maybe that team looks a little bit different, with a loss in that department. And they're going to be in trouble eventually as far as contracts are concerned. There's certain players on the team that
are going to have to get paid, kind of like what we're dealing with.
Because a couple players on the team that are very underpaid, and you got, certainly an exciting future in all of the pieces that they have there. But I think, to wrap up, what would be like the best way for the offseason to unfold from here on forward for you? What would be, I mean, maybe it can be a move, maybe be a series of moves. What do you think would really shore up our offseason?
Well, obviously signing Kako to a reasonable bridge deal, be like, we're betting on you, man. You're betting on yourself. We're betting on you too. We didn't, we took you at number 2. You're the guy, for us. Signing him to a reasonable bridge deal and be like, we want to pay you, giving him a good contract. We want you to have the money. And then maybe, like I said, I think last episode, the Tyler Mott market dries up and maybe we get him on a 1 year. Maybe he's looking for something more 3 to 4, and we get him on a 1 year. You play again like that, and we get to the Cup final. Maybe we can pay him, maybe we can't, but you'll be able to go out and be like, I was part of that Rangers team that made a difference. And he literally was a difference maker the whole playoff run for us. And then once he got back from injury, you're you never know how a guy's going to come back from injury. Is he going to still be the same player? Is he going to still have the same tenacity as he did? Is he going to be timid? You don't know. So my ideal offseason would be signing Kako to a reasonable deal, getting Tyler Mott on a 1 year deal. And if that, plan C would be, if Tyler Mott can't be signing someone with similar attributes as him, that can be a plug and play player, or maybe even giving one of these young guys that's in the draft pool a call up. I've heard a bunch of different things with Cully's name and Ottman, but I don't think unless they really prove themselves in camp, I don't think we're going to give them a call up with the salary cap situation, nor do we want to kind of drive a car and it's not ready to be driven, it doesn't have the right oil in it, kind of thing.
Well, you burn a year on the entry level contract, so there's that to think about as well. I think you're right as far as maybe giving those guys maybe some time, but injuries happen, and those will always force your hand as far as if we're looking for that little boost. What I do like about a Cooley or an Othman is that those two dudes sort of similarly offer a gritty style that is, in my opinion, conducive to the ice time that they're going to get. Not that I want those
fourth line, plug and play position.
Right. Not that that's where we want to sequester folks with maybe a higher potential than that, but I think that to have an immediate impact in that role, and then to show that you can stick around, that might not be the worst way for us to wrap up.
the only thing about Othman is I think he's not old enough to go down to the AHL where we could use him for a call up. I think his birthday's after the January cutoff. I think he's still 19, so I think you have to be 20 for the Wolfpack, like turn 20. So I don't think he would be eligible. So then would he go back to the Spitfire? I don't know.
Well, so the other thing is that Kravtsov is, I think, going to be a big X factor in this year. If he can come out and perform, and I think what we gauge as a good performance is going to be, setting those expectations is going to be really crucial. But I would love to see like a 15 to 20 goal season out of Kravy, because if we can rekindle that flame that once was, and get something out of these guys, that I think that the real difference for me, and what might force the conversation that we were just having, is how well Kravtsov does and how healthy we can stay, because those little depth additions are going to be very carefully made, I'm sure. And obviously we don't want to, force anybody into a
Or rock
position
the
that
boat too much where, it disrupts, like, all right, that guy's not ready and he's messing up the veteran guys' like presence,
One last one for you before we break. Now that the Tkachuk trade is over and done with, pretty good haul, I would say, that goes the other way. You have Weegar, an MVP candidate. You have Huberdeau, a 100-point player. He's almost a point per game player his career, and a player that doesn't often get shopped around, and a first-round pick, albeit in a year or two. But if you're the Rangers, seeing the price, seeing the ransom that went for Tkachuk, what would our trade package even look like? Because some of the things that we were seeing out there have been completely blown out of the water by a guy like Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, and a first-round draft pick going the other way.
Well, I think Calgary, like, after where they went in the playoffs last year, wasn't like, this isn't a breakdown. Like, we need to get somebody that can play now. And we all know Huberdeau can play. He wasn't the guy, like, he's been the guy, franchise leader in a lot of stats for Florida, but he never brought them to the promised land. Yeah, did they get the right team around him? Maybe, maybe not. Like, last year's looked like their best shot since '96. But I think it's a good change of scenery for him. But I think Calgary's ready not to break down after losing Gaudreau for nothing, and then coming back with Huberdeau. Like, they don't want to be like, we're just some Western Canadian team that's just closing up shop. Like, they want to put a team that's out there on the ice. So something we would have had to give up somebody that would have been like ready to play now, like a difference maker. Like, the only person I could think, which we never would have given up, so everybody don't come after me after I say this, would have been a package deal with like a Chris Kreider, a good prospect, and a first-round pick. That would have been the only, like, kind of like Huberdeau. Like, Chris Kreider would have never seen it coming, that, like, coming off a 50-goal scoring year, that he would be traded. Like, but he has a no movement clause. But I think Huberdeau, I read somewhere, had a no movement clause, but he was coming up. They were starting contract talks with him, so he let them know, like, 6 teams he didn't want to be traded to. Calgary wasn't on that list, so
that is the interesting thing about these lists and these scenarios, because Huberdeau actually mentioned that contract negotiations started, but nothing formal, nothing was ever offered to him. So he never had the chance to say, like, yeah, I want to stay there. Now, does the franchise owe you that as a draft pick? There's some people that maybe have a different opinion, but the game's a business. I think that by Tkachuk being as professional as he was and saying that I'm not going to sign here, it gave Calgary a chance to get well more than
get
they ever.
something for him. That was nice of him. I agree with that.
I think your comparison is actually dead on, that they actually, instead of replacing Tkachuk, they actually replaced Gaudreau. Because if you look at the way that Huberdeau and Gaudreau sort of play the game, it is not a mistake that position was a complete gap and that they needed to be filled, and that their price and what they were willing to receive back had a lot to do with what they could immediately replace. I think you're completely right. Scary thing for them is if they can't sign Huberdeau, because he's due money. And the other thing that's going to be interesting as well is he's 29 years old. So let's say he does sign an 8-year deal. Let's say he signs a 7-year deal.
Could be his last contract.
36, 37, borderline last contract, unless you sort of float around the league trying to be that last little piece for somebody. And then that's it. So, this is a big contract for him. This is a big decision to make. And if you're Calgary and you can't get them under contract, it is a bad look. I think that's
so
all
right now you would say Calgary won the deal over
I
Florida?
would say that they got more in return. I'm a little underwhelmed looking at the Florida lineup. But they had 20 goal scorers halfway through the season. If you looked at their depth in that aspect, what for me, what's going to be fun to see is if they can have this happen as if nothing's happened. If they can make these changes and then go into next season and continue all that momentum, maybe that early playoff exit gives them a little bit of a bite. But I don't
Here's a good question for you. So out of the Canadian teams, did they click up or did they stay where they were at? Or did another Canadian team, like maybe since the Senators have an off season, pass where Calgary was?
I wouldn't put the Sens above where Calgary is at this exact moment, but don't be surprised if that is a competitive. Not that
After
Ottawa,
mid-season, you never know.
right? Not that they're going to be like that, but that is going to be interesting to see because I think Calgary's gotten worse and I think Ottawa's gotten better. Do I think it's a clear pass?
I'm with you on the pecking order, but I think it could go either way depending on once the season starts.
Dude, don't forget, Claude Giroux is good. Alex DeBrincat is good at playing hockey. So is Tkachuk. So is Stützle. I mean, so is Norris. These guys are good players. And so is Thomas Chabot. I mean, they kind of have enough to at least start to gravitate towards the team. And it kind of reminds me of a similar position to the Rangers. They picked third and fourth. We picked first and second. They have attracted a free agent. They've garnished a big trade to lure in the big guy. So they're making
rank your Canadian teams right now. Who would be the best Canadian team right now? Who you got?
I think the best player in the world. I think that
It's gotta be Edmonton, right?
I think Edmonton showed why having Connor McDavid is a complete fucking game changer. And I love
who you got it to. Who you got it to?
One second. I love that the playoffs reminded everybody who top fucking daddy is because Connor McDavid for about 3 weeks, everybody forgot that this motherfucker was the best player in the world.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews, I would have to go Leafs maybe second. Austin Matthews is another one of those game changing players that you got to have you got to have 3 guys on him at all times. And I would say after that, the power rankings take a
This
little
is
bit.
where things get funky at number 3. Who does Steve put at number 3?
It's got to be Calgary, right? Because then I'm trying to think of who's the bottom. Because we got.
I know we don't want to who do you
Edmonton, Leafs,
like?
Calgary.
The bottom 3 would be Montreal.
Montreal's got to be the worst team one of the worst teams in the league. They've gotten better over this last season, but they have to be one of the worst teams in the league. Period.
Unpopular opinion. I would say Montreal would be a click up for me. It would go like Winnipeg, Montreal.
Yeah, but
I think the upside.
Okay,
Winnipeg's selling off right now, and Montreal's they're a young stock. You're buying into them.
Yeah, sure. I think Scheifele and Hellebuck are. Sorry?
They're going to be gone soon.
They're going to be gone. You're right. Okay, we're talking about right now. I'm talking about. I think those 2 players are better than any players that are on the Montreal Canadiens roster. So, and let's not shit on this overall number 1 guy who no one's ever heard of. But I'll wait to see if I'm right. But I think that I'm going to put for now Montreal as a placeholder on the bottom, and we'll put the Jets slightly above that. But you can't forget the Canucks because they had a point right at the end of the year where they almost made a playoff spot. So I'm going to go Montreal.
But they sold off a little at the deadline last year.
I'm sorry?
They sold off a little at the deadline. They didn't.
But they're also 8 points out of the dance. I mean, they were right there. And if Montreal from a season ago shows you anything, you just have to be there. I mean, JT Miller is going to be a big X factor for them as well. Brock Boeser had a little bit of a down year for them. Pretty sure Pettersson was injured. I mean, you got to have Quinn Hughes is an exciting player. I mean, I would put them a cut above the teams that we've talked about, at least as far as what their projections and what they could do, I should say. So again, JT Miller, I'd say is a better player than most of these teams even have. So let's go Montreal Jets, Ottawa, Vancouver, Leafs, Calgary Leafs, Edmonton. And I think that the Leafs are a better team, but they're the memeiest team on the planet, and they're never going to make it past that second round. It's just that curse. And I think eventually all this top heaviness is going to completely bite them. And people are gonna want out, and Austin Matthews is gonna sign a really
But he
team
ain't
friendly
going to
contract.
Arizona. I don't care that he's from the desert. He ain't
He's
going
gonna
there.
come to the
They ain't even
Rangers,
get. He
boy.
goes there. They get sold immediately and go
It's
right back up to
all over
Canada.
for you, fella. He's coming to the Rangers. It was a long run. You did well, but
All
it was a
right,
pleasure,
it's been
man.
fun, Steve. I
Always
think
a
we're
pleasure.
gonna end it for today. Thank you. This wraps up episode 46. Have a great one. Let's go Rangers.
Let's go, buddy.